eukaryotic. So what these words actually mean, their direct translation, a prokaryotic or prokaryote means before nucleus. It literally translates to before nucleus. And eukaryote, although it would make sense if it was after nucleus, it's true nucleus. Okay? And we'll see why that's relevant in a moment. So, prokaryotes, there's two types, two major categories. We have what are known as bacteria. And then we also have archaea, different species or different category of prokaryotes that we'll talk about later when we get into evolution. So there's two types of prokaryotes. Eukaryotes, there are 4 different types. So we have fungi, we've got protists, we have plants, and we have animals. Eukaryotic cells are found in protists, plants, fungi, and animals. Okay, so if we were to compare these two, I had this geometry teacher in high school who, for whatever reason, could always draw like an immaculate circle on the board underneath the document camera, and it weirded everybody out because I'm over here like struggling to draw a real circle. But he would like effortlessly draw a perfect circle. Okay, so to compare these two, the first major difference, and this goes back to their name, is that prokaryotes, they do not have a nucleus. Right? Their DNA is not housed or contained in a nucleus. But eukaryotes have nucleus. The second major difference is that prokaryotes, they tend to be smaller in size. Eukaryotes tend to be larger. Okay. All right, the third difference is that prokaryotes, they don't have what are known as membrane-bound organelles. And all that term means is that these organelles, like a chloroplast, you notice that a lot of them have membranes around them. Right? Membrane-bound is like they're contained by a membrane. That's all membrane-bound means. Okay. But eukaryotes, as you just learned about, a lot of them have membrane-bound organelles. So those are the 3 distinguishing characteristics between these two. Things they have in common. They all have DNA. They all have ribosomes, which you learned are where proteins are initially synthesized, right? either found on the rough ER or in what's known as the cytoplasm. Okay. Third similarity is that they all have a plasma membrane. Every single type of prokaryote and eukaryote has a plasma membrane around the outer edge. And lastly, they'll have something called cytoplasm or cytosol. If you're curious what the difference is, cytoplasm is like the general space inside of a cell. Cytosol is like the substance that fills that space. Right? Cytoplasm is the space. Cytosol is the substance that fills that space. All right. So, if those are those two types of cells within the eukaryote, we've got two types of major eukaryotic cells. We've got plants and animal cells. Okay. Yes, there are eukaryotes that are part of fungi or protists, but the two major ones that we're going to see, we're going to talk about, are plants and animal cells. Okay. All right, a quick comparison here is that a plant cell has a cell wall, which is a rigid structure on top of the cell membrane. It also has something called chloroplasts. It has a central vacuole. Now, vacuoles are found in plant and animal cells, but what distinguishes a plant cell is that they have this huge central vacuole that you can actually see under a microscope. They have a huge central vacuole. All right, so for animals, it's just the opposite, so no cell wall, no chloroplasts, and no central vacuole. With pretty much all other organelles, they have in common. Right? They have all other organelles in common. Mitochondria are in both. Lysosomes, Golgi apparatus, and plastic reticulum, all of those are in both of those cell types. All right. So, the second objective that I mentioned was that now that we have a comparison, this has led to scientists thinking about prokaryotes. They tend to be more simple, right? They just have DNA, ribosomes. But then eukaryotes seem to be more complex. So, they've wondered, did prokaryotes lead to eukaryotes? Right? Simple to more complex evolutionarily, right? And so that's led to what's called the theory of endosymbiosis. Theory of endosymbiosis. This basically states this is the idea that an early ancestor of eukaryotic organisms engulfed or absorbed prokaryotic cell. It engulfed a prokaryotic cell and developed a symbiotic relationship where both benefit in particular. This likely led to chloroplasts and mitochondria. So most of this theory focuses around chloroplasts and mitochondria. Most of the evidence is found we consider those two organelles. For some reason, this makes me think of, if there's any Office fans out there, when Dwight is describing that when his mom was pregnant with him, there was another baby in the womb, and he resorbed the other fetus, and so he's like, I have the strength of a man and a fetus. He's like, resorbed that. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So I don't know why I think about that, but I think of like the eukaryotic cell is like Dwight, and the prokaryote is like the other baby in the womb that was absorbed and now has given eukaryotes all these different abilities. If that helps you remember, great. I don't know why I think about that, but okay. So let's talk a little bit about mitochondria and chloroplasts and why that is the focus of this theory. So mitochondria and chloroplasts. All right, so you just saw that a mitochondria kind of looks like this. Okay. We have outer membranes and these inner membranes that are called cristae. Okay. All right, and the major things that we know is that this is the site of energy conversion in the cell. Energy conversion. You do not create energy. You're not generating energy. That's why the powerhouse of the cell thing doesn't necessarily hold up. So you're actually transforming or converting one type of energy into another. Those types are glucose into ATP. Transforming the energy in glucose into ATP through something called cellular respiration. So, what's also interesting is that you have inside of this you have ribosomes and you have DNA. Ribosomes and you have DNA. All right, so chloroplasts, and then we'll link this to our theory of endosymbiosis. Okay. They look a little different. We have these little stacks that we call granum, that are made up of multiple thylakoids. And then we also, just like in mitochondria, we have ribosomes and DNA. we call this the site of energy capture. Another energy transformation is happening, but this time we're going from solar to glucose. Solar energy to glucose through photosynthesis. And we'll get into that a lot more in Unit 3. Okay. So, last part of this. So why are these two the focus of the theory of endosymbiosis? Well, there's three major pieces of evidence that endosymbiosis occurred. So the first one is the presence of double membranes. So you probably heard as you were listening to those presentations that both chloroplasts and mitochondria, they have like an inner and an outer membrane. And that helps with their function. But the presence of double membrane, this supports the idea that eukaryotes engulfed a prokaryote. Right, so think for a moment. Imagine these two were prokaryotic cells. If it gets absorbed or engulfed, right, it's like the membrane of the eukaryote is swallowing up the prokaryote. So think about this. Right, if this is our eukaryote, and this is our prokaryote, right? If it's engulfing, right, then what's going to happen is you're going to have that membrane surround that prokaryote as it comes in. Right, so the membrane of the eukaryote is going to surround that prokaryote. You get a double membrane. Right, so the fact that there's a double membrane supports the idea of endosymbiosis. Okay. Second piece of evidence is the presence of DNA in chloroplasts and mitochondria. So they actually have their own DNA that they use to create proteins that they need for their operations. So this is used to synthesize their own proteins. So they actually don't get their proteins from other areas of the cell. A lot of their proteins they just synthesize in-house because they have their own DNA. Remember, they have their own ribosomes, right? So they can actually pump out proteins themselves. So they're self-sufficient in a sense. They can do that on their own. Okay? And the last piece of evidence that we'll talk about is that they have replication, or that they replicate similar to prokaryotes. So chloroplasts and mitochondria. They divide on their own. So when a cell divides, we know it's called mitosis, right? The overall cell, everything duplicates, the DNA duplicates, and then it splits. The chloroplasts and the mitochondria, they actually have that ability too. They will replicate their DNA and they will split. Which is crazy. Right? So these three pieces of evidence, they support the idea that especially when it comes to chloroplasts and mitochondria, those used to be prokaryotes that got absorbed by eukaryotic cell. So evolutionarily, that supports this theory. Okay. Are there any questions or things that you would like me to repeat or clarify? Okay, so if you're asked about endosymbiotic theory, referencing mitochondria and chloroplasts, these three pieces of evidence support the idea that they were once prokaryotic cells that got absorbed. All right. If there are no questions, we're going to take a 2-minute break. If you want to get up, stretch, you can, and then we'll come back in about 2 minutes.